Welcome to this recording of the Activist Lawyer podcast, brought to you from the Granite Podcast Studio in the heart of Newry City. We are delighted that you could join us at Activist Lawyer, where we will be discussing a range of topical matters engaging not only with lawyers, but people who are committed to highlighting and combating injustices and inequalities. We will bring you our thoughts, but invite you to share yours. We'll be looking for contributors to our blog at activistlawyer.com, as we want your perspective as we unravel and unpack a host of issues. My name is Sarah Henry and I'm a solicitor practising in Newry City. I worked with a human rights firm in Dublin for many years and with a number of rights-based organisations and charities. I'm looking forward to meeting some fantastic guests throughout this series. So hello everybody, thank you again for joining us today. I'm in the studio here with Jack.
Hello everybody.
And today's recording is something a little bit different. We had Aoife Clements, who is the founder of 50/50 NI. Mm-hmm. How did you find that?
It was very educational. Sometimes we get lost in the whole topic of gender and politics, and because Northern Ireland was led by two women, you kind of forget everyone below that. So it was good. It was educational.
What you focus on. So Jack took a lot away with him. I have to say I did too. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes you take it for granted that you know people or you've worked in organisations before, but Aoife is really at the forefront now of establishing something new in Northern Ireland. It's very exciting. She's very, very passionate and very well informed, and she's involved in so many different areas and different issues. So I think, again, like many of our guests before, she's just somebody very inspirational, and she gives lots of good advice at the end, of course, when we ask about activism, and hopefully she inspires a few of our listeners. Just to give a bit of context to it, Aoife Clements, as we said, is the actual founder of 50/50 NI. She said she found it during the pandemic.
Yeah, something good coming out of the pandemic. Anyway.
I feel so useless. I just whinged the entire time.
I cooked.
You cooked and ran, and I whinged. So it's nice to have somebody who actually was proactive and is doing something very, very meaningful with their lives, and also helping others as well. So Aoife has a background in politics and women's rights. She's passionate about gender equality, which is very evident, including women in the legislative procedure, which is her main area of interest. Yep. Aoife has earned her BA in anthropology, which is very interesting, and law from the London School of Economics, and has a master's in sociocultural anthropology from Durham University. I think she sees herself more as an anthropologist as well, taking strands of the law and her experience in that too. And she's currently due to commence a PhD in September.
Queens,
so she's very, very busy. So we're so grateful for her for taking time out to join us, and we hope you enjoy today's recording. All right, so thank you so much, Aoife, for joining us here today at Activist Lawyer.
Thanks so much for having me.
Brilliant. So we gave a little bit of a background there into Aoife's work, but I wonder, could you explain a little bit more to our listeners about the organisation that you set up and maybe your background as well, how you got there?
Yeah, so 50/50 NI is a new organisation I've set up just to encourage more women to get into politics, and at all levels as well. That's really important. So from councillor all the way up to MP. And we want to do that by giving women like the confidence, the skills and the knowledge that they need to get into politics. So our big thing that we want to do this year is set up some training workshops to give women, like I said, the confidence, and then also a little bit political education, how it all works, you know, how do you get selected, just all the knowledge that you need to get into politics. And then also awareness raising, because I think in Northern Ireland we've kind of struggled because we've had a woman First Minister and a Deputy First Minister. So everyone thinks that isn't an issue here, but it actually is when you look at the numbers. So awareness raising, just to say like there's not enough women in politics and we really need to have our voices heard. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Brilliant.
And then God, how did I start it? I was not interested in politics at all when I was a teenager, or even like I was like 20. I ashamed to say it, but I didn't care about anything. When I first went to uni, I did engineering and I didn't like it and I dropped out. And then I just randomly decided to do a law degree. I was like, anthropology, we'll do that with it. That'll make it interesting. Don't know what that is, but okay.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. So then in like second year, I took a legal anthropology class, and it was about, you know, like different perspectives to the law, and like a socio-legal class. And we did a week on like feminist approaches to the law. And I swear that one class like changed my life. I was like, oh my God, the world is so sexist. Everything is terrible. This is horrible. And then ever since then, I just like women in the legislative procedure. It's just something I'm really interested in. And like specifically how that affects women in their everyday life. Like how does that affect working class women, you know? So I've always been really interested in that. And I had the idea to start the organisation for ages, but then, you know, we didn't have a government in Northern Ireland for so long. And
Exactly.
yeah. And then last year, coronavirus, I didn't have a job and I was like, I'm just going to do this. And my partner was like, do it. If you don't do it now, you'll never do it, kind of thing.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I've just been working on it since then.
God, every cloud that you were very proactive then during coronavirus, and you've also attracted, you know, people who are very supportive, I guess, of the organisation.
Yeah.
And it's such a live issue, particularly at the moment. And you have so many models and different governments and different political settings to look to for I suppose research and, you know, trying to improve things here. We are recording this about a week or so after Arlene Foster, who was the first Minister of Northern Ireland, left her post. So again, I guess your organisation will play into that a little bit as well in terms of the commentary around it. But before we get to that, just, I suppose, in general, why do we still need organisations like 50/50 NI? I mean, in general there you said, yes, we did have a Deputy First Minister woman and a First Minister woman. That seems good, doesn't it? It seems like everything's fine. But why do we need to push this message forward still? And, you know, we're Ireland probably are in the same boat when it comes to political.
Yeah, I think we need to push the message forward for like two main reasons. So the first main reason is that the numbers are not there. We need to be at 50% because like realistically women are 50% of the population, so we should be 50% of the elected representatives. I don't really think you can call yourself a true democracy unless you have like a representative. Yeah. And then secondly, we need organisations like 50/50 for giving women the confidence seems to be the biggest barrier. Like we do bi-monthly interviews with women in politics for 50/50 NI on the blog, and every single woman I've spoken to in politics has said, I wouldn't have done this if X, Y, or Z hadn't encouraged me. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I was smart enough or qualified. Just everyone says some variation of that. Like women really don't have the confidence, and that's what I really, really want to do, is give women the confidence. And I think that comes from having the knowledge and realising that like anyone can be a politician as long as they are in it for the right reasons and they want to make a change and help people, you know? Absolutely.
And I suppose while we do have fantastic role models out there, I suppose people are still, you know, dealing with perceived barriers to progressing in that world. But Jack, you've been looking into this a little bit as well.
Yeah, just look at the numbers that you have been putting out. Obviously, we've done a bit of research before that, and I know you were saying about Arlene Foster and Michelle O'Neill. They're the top two representatives in Northern Ireland. Kind of that skews everybody's view of women in politics, especially in Northern Ireland, because you think, God, if there's two women leading the two biggest parties in Northern Ireland, then it mustn't be that bad. But obviously, looking at statistics, especially on the 50/50 website that you have put out, it shows that 26% of local councillors are women and 37% of mayors are women. And then if we look closer at home, 33% of the MLAs in Northern Ireland are women, and then 22% of NI MPs are women as well. So the numbers, even though two women did lead the two biggest parties, the numbers below that are just completely underrepresented.
Yeah.
The numbers are just not there. Actually, interestingly though, in the last election for Northern Ireland, women were basically elected at the same rate they were put on the ballot. So I think like 24% of the candidates or something like that were women, and then 22% of the candidates that were elected were women. So it really shows that there's not a problem at the ballot box. Like
It's
people
the
are
entry in.
Yeah, people are willing to vote for women, but there just aren't women on the ballots, you know. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So Aoife, where is the evidence that more women will benefit, you know, our democracy? What is your research based on? What other models have you been looking at to kind of prove your aims of the organisation?
Yes, so there's lots of evidence in academia and from think tanks, and there's actually a really great study done by Oxfam and Bridge on quotas and getting women into politics and how it benefits everyone. And women have definitely shown to be better at spending on health and education and social care. There was a great study done where from 1979 till 2009 in Canada, the number of women in politics increased from 4% to 25%. And over that time, the mortality rate for all reasons in Canada decreased by 37.5%.
Wow.
And that like relationship still existed when you controlled for other factors. So like women definitely, they do contribute to a healthier population, which is great. They're better spending in education and just getting girls into school. Like in Rwanda, they're the leader at women in politics. And ever since they've increased the women in politics, girls now go to school, primary school at the same rate as boys in Rwanda, which is great. So it's not just good for like getting women's rights on the agenda.
No.
It's good for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It benefits everybody. And what about decision making though? Is there any research around that? And I'm thinking of one particular person, Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand, around COVID, and other women leaders as well. I think I could be wrong, but I think there was kind of very quick decisions being made there, and therefore the countries ended up in a very different environment than we perhaps are.
Yeah, I think that the COVID like phenomenon in the women leaders really like sparked an interest into women and their decision making, and it showed that women are less risk averse when it comes to the economy. So women are they prioritize people basically. So with Jacinta Ardern and other leaders during coronavirus, we saw that they were more willing to lock down early to save lives and worry about the economy later, because women, lives were the priority for them. And it worked. I mean, they had like half the mortality rate that other countries had.
It's fascinating,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, you've seen that, and you're saying that the pandemic did highlight that, because you've seen, especially at the start of COVID, there was articles going out every day about how women leaders, I think Germany as well, they did so much better than the UK, and it was 5 or 6 countries were just highlighted who had women leaders, how much they did better than the countries who were led by men. Yeah,
and there was really good research done in that to sort of debunk the myth that it was just a few random countries that just happened to be run by women. It was like a study was done and they paired them up with similar countries population wise. Like New Zealand was paired with Ireland, etc. And it showed that having a woman leader actually was the determining factor there. It wasn't just random. It didn't just happen to be that, Germany did well, but it wasn't because they had a woman leader. You know, like it actually was. Yeah.
It was. I think that's so interesting. When I think of myself, I'm the worst person at making any decisions. I would not want that to fall on my head. But yeah, absolutely great job. And I think it's great for your organisation as well that you have these live, significant examples of women who work in politics and how it works so well. So that's fantastic. And just around, I suppose, other countries as well. I worked a little bit on this years ago in Dublin with the Women's Council. You could see how things were working around women in leadership and encouraging them into politics. But where do you look? What countries do you look at maybe for, exemplary?
It's really, really interesting. It's such an interesting topic because the way to get more women into politics, it is so vast and so different. So out of the top countries of women in politics, I think about 15 out of 20 of them have some kind of quota. But the type of quota that you use really depends on your political context. So if you have a first past the post electoral system, then reserved seats work quite well for you. But if you live in a country that, say, for some reason isn't willing to elect women, then a closed list system might work better for you. It really depends. And then there's some evidence to say that authoritarian countries are better at getting more women into politics. Right. So it's just, it really depends on the context. So for Northern Ireland, we have really higher than normal average, safe seats. I think 77% of our seats are considered safe. So I personally think that then all women shortlists would work well for that, because we know that you're probably going to win that seat, or out of 2 parties are likely to win a particular seat, or because the way that Northern Ireland is. And the all women shortlist works really well because Scotland just had their election last week, and they now have 45% women in the Scottish Parliament, which is amazing. And they also have elected a woman of colour and a disabled woman, so they're doing really well. And it's because the SNP and other parties take a really proactive approach to getting women on the ballot. The SNP ran all women shortlists in 9 of their seats. So it shows that they have great numbers, but it's because people are making the effort. It's not just happening. Yeah.
So it's about being proactive, and it's not just about not creating barriers as such. It's about going out there and making sure that you're inclusive as possible. And inclusivity, of course, includes women and women from different.
I think it's twofold, because quotas, they're really good at acting as a springboard to get women into politics, but they also, like you just said, they don't remove barriers. They don't remove the need for maternity leave. They don't remove sexual harassment. They don't remove violence against women online. And also you don't necessarily need quotas, because I think 4 or 5 of the countries in the top 20 don't have any quotas. They just
interesting.
happen to be really good at, like the Seychelles, Cuba and Finland all do really well and they don't have quotas.
See, with quotas, sometimes when you're reading online, could it be seen as like a fake, like a fake way to get equality?
Like a box ticking exercise,
like a box ticking,
almost.
yeah, instead of actually bringing down the reasons why women aren't getting into politics.
I think that it's like handy to do it both ways because, like I said, the quotas work as a nice springboard because also one of the barriers is not seeing women in politics. So if you get more women into politics, then you'll see women, girls start to think, I could do that too.
Yeah.
And then also, I think it just, like, men have a leg up. Like, it's a social leg up. So why not try and level the playing field with a quota? You know, it's not like women are getting this unfair advantage. Men have had an unfair advantage for millennium, you know? So,
So the two work in different ways, I guess. So
it's best to work them together, I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. So just moving on a little bit, well, we're kind of still back here in Northern Ireland, but historically, you know, looking at recent developments connected to historical issues. And I mean, in my lifetime, I'm going back to Northern Ireland when I remember, you know, certain party leaders attacking women from the outset just because they ventured into politics. And, you know, about going home and you should be at home having children for Ulster and different things like this. So thankfully, it seems we've moved on a little bit. However, there still seems to be barriers there. And I'm wondering, Aoife, just in today's modern age and society, are women still facing considerable pushback? And do you think they have more confidence because of organisations like yourselves who stand up to this level of misogyny than they would have had previously? And that's more encouraging, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that there's still misogyny, but the outright, you know, women don't belong in politics misogyny is not really there anymore, thank God. I mean, hopefully, in the majority. Yeah. Women aren't being told, like, this is not the place for you, which is great. But, I mean, there's still sexual harassment. There's still women being talked over. Like, I spoke to a counsellor for one of our interviews, and she is a counsellor in Ballymena, and she said that her chamber is absolutely horrific. It's very male dominated, and she said that when she speaks, she just feels like she's being gaslit by like 20 people at once. Like, it's,
I've heard that before at local level, working with local councillors here. They mention it on the side. They don't raise it, but it's almost like they're so used to it, and it's only when they're working for years and years they build a little bit of confidence to address it. But I can imagine that was very scary and, you know, unsettling when you first start off in politics. So
especially if you're a young woman as well, there's that added layer of like ageism as well as the sexism.
Absolutely.
And then I think organisations like 50-50 NI, and then, you know, its equivalent in the UK, 55th Parliament, Elect Her, and then Women for Election in the South, like definitely are helping. And then also helping in the sense that when you get more women into politics, there's a more like a sisterhood. Yeah. Like so many politicians have said to me, you know, the women from other parties on my council, like I don't know what I would do without them. You know, it's nice to see them like
cross party lines.
and
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and women are actually like statistically shown to be better at working cross party and working collaboratively, which is great in general, but even better for Northern Ireland. That's what we need.
We need this. We need cross party cooperation.
So like giving people the confidence, and then as you get more in, it's kind of a snowball effect then, because you've got the sisterhood and you feel more comfortable. We actually want to start like a women in politics network so that women can have like kind of like a peer circle. Women can share their experiences, and if they have any issues, they can kind of like, you know, band together.
Fantastic. It's about collaboration, and as you said, a sisterhood, and having people to rely on and people who understand where you're coming from. You're not just isolated.
Yeah. So obviously you were talking about the historical past and the movement now, but you can't talk about now without talking about social media. And I was just wondering your take on social media, how it affects women in politics, entering politics, whether it's a good thing by highlighting misogyny, sexual assault, or whether it's a way for people to, you always see these crude comments from politicians, you see it from the public as well. Is social media a good thing for women in politics, or is it a bad thing?
I don't think it's very specifically good or bad, because it's good in the sense that women have access to their politicians in the way that they wouldn't have normally had. And I see that great for, you know, young women seeing female politicians and like seeing that that is something that women can do. And then they're seeing all the great work that these women do. So that's great. And then also, like you said, if they're having negative experiences, they can share that online and we can expose it. But then that access also is a negative, because like misogyny has access to politicians in a way that it didn't before. I mean, the stories that women have told me about the messages that they get, it's absolutely horrific. It's like super misogynistic, and it's also just really creepy. Like young counsellors saying that men will call them up and like make up an issue and say like, you need to come to my house and sort this out. Like, no.
Wow.
A woman told me once that she was up late at night breastfeeding her child, and then she started getting all these creepy messages like, oh, you're up late, and she's like, feeding my child, leave me alone.
Wow. It's startling. But yeah, that's where we see a lot of it being shared. So I think in one way it's good to have the message there, but nonetheless, when you're on the receiving end of that, how bad must that feel, and how, you know, discouraging.
Yeah, I really think that more needs to be done, because this is violence against women online. Yeah. I mean, the women's sector in Northern Ireland have been trying to get a violence against women strategy for a long time. And if we do finally get it, I really want to make sure that online violence is included in that. Yeah.
It has to be included. And just there we were saying, I suppose we were saying, you know, we don't have the same level of misogyny just in general in terms of women entering politics. But it's funny how, in just looking to Ireland and Irish law at the moment around the 1937 Constitution, where for years it has the article where, you know, it's enshrined that a woman's place is in the home and not at work at all. So this came to light because the Taoiseach Micheál Martin had to deal with Minister Helen McEntee, who's the Minister for Justice, who announced her pregnancy in December last year, and she was due to go off on maternity leave in May. And there's no provision for that at all, paid maternity leave for somebody that senior. Other public officials, of course, yes, it's provided for. But this is a first in Irish history that a woman has become pregnant during her term. So there was a whole big, almost a crisis, verging on a crisis about, well, what do we do here? This woman's about to have her baby. So it's brought to light the question, which has been raised hundreds of times before, Eamon de Valera's constitution about women working at home. You know, we remember far back teachers, once they became pregnant, pretty much lost their job. And so this conversation is arising, and thankfully Minister Helen McEntee is off on her 6 months paid maternity leave. But wow, what a shocking,
I know, it's crazy,
you know, world we live in when we're still back in 1937, well, in Ireland at least. So I mean, yeah, women in politics at that senior level face serious challenges, it seems. How did you view that, or how have your organisation been looking at
I think it just really highlights how that institution was not made for women to be part of it, you know. Like, if no one ever thought of maternity leave, it's because they didn't think there was going to be women there.
I didn't even know that.
It's terrible. And then in the UK, Stella Creasy had a baby, and she wasn't going to get maternity leave, and she was going to take a legal case against the government. And they have like recently introduced a maternity leave provision, but it's only for front benchers. So it's not for backbenchers, which doesn't make any sense.
These are our policy makers and legislators, and you know, it's just very, very shocking. But I think it's great that these things are raised, and people are genuinely startled by it. Like even you saying, Jack, you weren't aware of that level, but it's very, it's still quite shocking, and obviously that needs to be removed from the Constitution for sure. And we're hoping that organisations are getting there to do that. But there's other people as well, I suppose, and just moving on to kind of, I suppose your organisation is very much inspiring younger women as well to get into politics. And people are very engaged. They're engaged in social media. You know, there's so many reports about we'll not focus too much on the DUP there in Arlene Foster, but there's the reports and comments around her being removed or leaving her office, let's say. There's such misogyny embedded in it. And because she was a woman, and you hear a lot about emotional, she was given in too easily, and everybody against her were men in her party, it seems. How do young women look at that, and how do they feel, and how maybe does your organisation kind of
I think
respond?
it's hard, because also there was all these comments about how like, oh, she can like focus on her home life and stuff. Like, when have you ever heard someone say that about a male politician? Which is crazy.
I did, that's what was said, wasn't it? At least now she can go home and focus on her family.
Yeah, like wild. Also, I think that all of this, like, she was given in too easy, she's not hard enough. It again just shows how politics is a male institution, that you have to act like a man to be taken seriously. Almost like women have been shown that they're better at collaborating, they're better at reaching consensus. So it's not a bad thing to be able to compromise and reach a consensus. Like, you're not giving in, you're not, it's not a bad thing.
And then when you say it, if she did act the opposite of what she's been accused, she would be accused of being a bad person. She'd be accused of being too strong. So women are put down for being compromising too much, and then if she acts the opposite way, they're put down for being that as well.
Exactly,
so
and that's because she's a woman, and she's and she's cold. And
if it was a man, it would be a strong leader.
Exactly.
Be described as
the way Theresa May, I can think of coming up to when before Boris became leader, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, she couldn't do right for doing wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we witness that a lot. One woman I've been watching really closely is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah.
If I can mention that. She's done so many of these
amazing.
speeches, and she's just rattled people to their bones. Leaving senators and congressmen absolutely shocked and dumbfounded because she stood up and publicly shamed them and embarrassed them for serious comments and misogyny. People like her, how does she, I suppose she's a big influencer and somebody who your organisation would look to, but how can we get women to that level where they're as focused as her?
Yeah, she's definitely like the ideal. She's the ideal. Like, she's amazing. And she so genuinely cares. Like, that's why she's in politics, because she cares. And like, that's why people should be in politics. So we're trying to get more women into politics because there's so many women out there that really care about particular issues. They also have experiences that men will never have. I mean, I spoke at a UUP event recently, and there was lots of women who had, disabled children, and they were saying about local playgrounds not being accessible. And like, those are because women are still the primary caregivers. There are experiences that men don't have. So women have so much to give. Like, so they can be like AOC, they can be these great politicians if only they knew that they were allowed to, that they have the confidence that, this door is open to you. So that's what we're all about. We're like, because there's so many women that already work in their community and do so much work in community groups, and they would make fantastic counsellors, but it doesn't even occur to them, you know?
It wouldn't.
So yeah, that's what we're all about. We're like, if you're already doing all this work, you should be doing it and getting paid for it as a counsellor, like, you could be making such a difference. So she's a real inspiration, and there's so many women that could replicate that, but they just don't have the confidence, and it's so sad. Yeah, it
is. And just from your, Jack, you had a question just about your career path as well, and maybe because we're lawyers in Thomas here, and we've all studied or dabbled in the law in some way.
So obviously we're talking about women here, but it's a group. It needs to be a group of us that can support women. So how can we as a group, as people, support women and girls considering going into politics? And I know you're down the legal route, and so are we. Is that a good path to get into politics?
I think we can support girls by having better political education in school. Like I said, I didn't know anything about politics until I was 20, and randomly doing a law degree because I thought, that'll get me a job, and then I ended up loving it. Get better political education. That's actually something I want to do workshops with girls school age. My partner is a teacher, so he's like, this is what you need to do. I'll help you do it.
Some tips for you.
Better political education. I think the law is a good route because it's so intertwined with politics, but also I think the social sciences are a really good route. I personally think everyone in politics should have some kind of grounding in the social sciences. Like, I did a law degree, and I'm actually going to do my PhD in law next year, but I don't consider myself a lawyer. I consider myself an anthropologist, kind of. So I think that socio-legal aspect is
bringing
really
it
good.
all together as well, because a lot of the guests we've had on, they happened to, and I don't think it was their intention, but the kind of intersection there between law and politics became very apparent. So they're going to be on the show for this season as well. So it's just an interest in that we come across it quite a lot. But just with your organisation then, what's the future? Once we've opened up again a little bit?
What are the plans for 50/50
NI? So the big plan this year is to get the training events up and running. So I'm designing those at the minute. Hopefully they'll be sort of by the summertime going. And then in the next year we want to add on the school political education in schools. And we also want to do some more things to get girls engaged in politics. So like maybe essay competitions or an all-girls debating contest would be fun. Fantastic. I think. And then also awareness raising. We've got the election next year, so we really want to be making sure that women are on the ballots for that, doing lots of awareness raising campaigning. And just sort of, highlighting which parties are doing well and which parties aren't doing well, just so people are informed, Yeah, so that's what we want to do.
Having the research there to back up your
Yeah.
work, which is fantastic. Just one thing that I'll go back on there that I wanted to ask, and I've noticed it, somebody else said it on our show there recently as well, about women's issues, and I'm saying this very loosely, okay? So they don't just affect women. None of these things do. They affect everybody. But when we're talking about matters like currently now in Northern Ireland, the mother and baby homes, the institutionalisation of women and their children, survivors of rape as well, and also issues around reproductive health care. Do you feel that these issues that are, traditionally associated with women only are being pushed forward and worked on for the first time ever, even though these are long overdue to be debated, because women seem to be leading the way when it comes to discussing these matters?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do. There's actually research to suggest that there's a critical mass of 30%. So once you reach 30% and above, women's rights become on the agenda if you have 30% women. And I mean, with the new domestic violence bill, I don't think that's a coincidence that has happened after Stormont reached 30% women, because there's actually people there to fight its corner. For sure. I think that has happened because there's been more women.
I think that's really interesting just to watch how that develops,
Yeah.
Anywhere, I guess. That's just, so I suppose the last question that we ask all of our guests, and I suppose it's around activism, and you yourself have not shied away from that. You obviously fell in love with an area and you've been very focused on that, but you've noticed huge problems and huge gaps, and you sought to address them through setting up your organisation. How would you encourage others to do that, and not just in respect of the area that you work in, but in general, so younger people or people who want to really make their voice heard or represent others? What words of advice do you have?
Yeah, I would just find what it is that you are really passionate about. I mean, we're all passionate about a lot of things. I'm also really passionate about mental health and domestic abuse, but this is the one thing that I feel like is my big issue.
Yeah.
So just find that big issue. I mean, if you have it, and then I would say just get involved in organisations that already exist, just to see how it's all done. Because when I lived in London, I volunteered for 50/50 Parliament. And obviously I wouldn't have been able to do this if I hadn't had the experience of how an organisation's actually run. Yeah. I still feel a bit lost sometimes. So get involved in stuff that's already out there. Volunteer for 50/50 and I if we need you in the future.
Do you hear that, everybody? We need volunteers.
Get involved, do your research, read a lot. I think you can never be educated enough on these issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just find your voice, get on social media and find people who are in the same
like-minded people and peers who can support you.
Yeah, like a little community, because I know social media can be really daunting and really scary, but I think when you find your group of people, it makes it so much more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'd be lost without, and even the area of work that we're in, we've just got a great network of practitioners and different people, not even just lawyers, but people who work in the areas of immigration or you'd be absolutely lost without that support.
That's so true, yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And, managing that with all of what you're doing, I mean, it must be tough going at times with...
Yeah.
But you're getting there. Yeah. Well, look, it's been fantastic having you on, Aoife, and the organisation will just go from strength to strength. It's fantastic. We'll be following it really closely and seeing what comes up. And also, I think you're doing it all at a really crucial time. It's just very, very timely, and we wish you the absolute best of luck with that.
Thank you, Aoife.
I think I need it.
Absolutely not. But thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely keep in touch to see how things are going.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No problem.
This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.